Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Frontiers of Knowledge. We are aware that the brain starts developing even before the child is born, and yet the development can be different for different people. The childhood problems, the problems of learning are the major issues that concern most of the parents. But one thing is curious, that the research finds that the brains are always ready to receive information, ready to learn, even when we are not prepared to learn. Amazing. It seems to be a contradiction. But that seems to be true from the latest studies done, especially in MIT. The MIT research shows that the brain region dedicated to reading and learning has connections for this skill of learning even before a child learns to read. By scanning the brains of the children before and after they learned to read, it was found that the scientists could predict very precisely where each visual word form area, VWFA, would develop. And this identification of the exact region of the brain enables us to treat those learning problems like attention disorder, dyslexia, left-handed approach, or any other issue connected with the learning of the child. This is based on the connection of that region to the other parts of the brain. So it's not only the identification of the brain or that portion of the brain which is ready to learn, but it is also the connection or the interconnectivity between the different regions. Neuroscientists have very often wondered why the brain has a region exclusively dedicated to reading. And this is a skill unique to the human beings and developed only 5,400 years back. 6,000 years back, 7,000 years back, human beings didn't have a skill to read as no other animal has. Ape, chimpanzee, they can do everything a human being can do except read. You see, time is not sufficient long enough to evolve this region which has reshaped the brain for specific task of reading and learning. So the new study suggests that visual word form area located in an area which receives visual inputs has pre-existing conditions and connections to the brain associated with the language processing, making it ideally suited to and devoted to the art of learning. Long-range connections that allow this region to the other areas drive this function of reading. And as far as they can identify this fusiform region of the brain has three sets of connections that distinguish it from next region, which is the cortex. Well, what this cortex, where the cognitive functions occur, has very specialized regions for face recognition, language comprehension, and many other tasks. And connected to that region is VWFA, which is the region for reading. So this region located in the fusiform at the base of the brain is responsible for identifying the string of letters. Now what they did was they had two sets of children, and the same set was scanned twice. First at the age of 5, before learning to read, and the age 10, after they had learned to read. In the scans at the age 10, 8 and 10, they predicted the precise area for each child using fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, for each child. And they also used another technique which they call diffused weighting imaging, which traces the connection between this region and the other parts of the brain. And they found that the scans at the age of 5 did not show that the brains were responding to the words. However, they found small evidence, and that is why they say there have been indications that some children are able to read even at the age of 2 and 3, because their area is much more distinctive. Now, what happens? We have identified, according to scientists, the connection of the language regions of the brain in adults, and now finding of strong evidence that these connections exist even before the child to learn. Is there any advantage of that? Yes. They can identify the children who are likely to risk the issues like developing dyslexia, reading difficulties, ADHD, and host of other issues that afflict children. And we call them dunces, we call them unintelligent, we call them backward. They are not so. That region is not developed. So the identification of this region enables them to identify the causes of that underdevelopment, in case it's possible by injecting the hormones which are lacking over there in that portion, or by implanting chips at an early stage in the brain of the child. The child's problem of dyslexia, of attention disorder, of lack of concentration, they can be removed. And the children who are pronounced as dunces and idiots would no longer remain so. This is an extremely important development, because till now what we have been doing is we have been unable to treat children suffering from ADHD, suffering from dyslexia, suffering from learning disorders, and calling them dunces, idiots, and whatnot. And in the undeveloped countries, like most part of India, where the education has not been identified with the scientific causes, the teachers often, especially in the villages, beat their children, give them corporal punishment, bodily punishment for not learning. The teachers have been failing in the discharge of their duty because they were not aware that if a child is not learning, it's not his fault. There is a chemical reaction and a lack of a hormone in that brain part, which is beyond his capability. So the need was to identify the cause, and now the cause has been identified, that the lack of development in VWFA. And now the next step, of course, for the researchers and the doctor is to identify the causes and the treatment of that. According to Ken Vischer, one of the scientists dealing with the research, he says they have identified the causes, and that is either a clot is there which restricts the flow of information, which can be removed either surgically or by implanting a small chip, and that small chip can bypass that clot. Thereby, child's IQ and capacity to learn shall increase. Now, this breakthrough research is extremely useful for children and for the elders. I fail to understand why such nuggets of information are not provided to the public at large, to the medical community, and to the teachers, the educationists. This research was done 8 months back, and it should have been a recipient of a Nobel Prize. UNESCO should have advocated this research and made it incumbent on the medical fraternity and the school authorities to ensure, or the health authorities to ensure, that all the children undergo this sort of a study, this sort of an MRI, as far as possible, so that the necessary remedial steps can be taken before they start learning at the age of 5. As I said, this can be identified even at the age of 5 or 4 even. Now they are going a step backward. First they had an MRI at the age of 5 and 10. Now they are having at 3, 4 and 5 to see the growth in the obstruction of the interconnectivity. Everything is there. There's only a lack of interconnectivity. And now on a lighter note, do you know that the wine glasses have been increasing in size for the last 200 years? As a matter of fact, in 20 years, from 1960 to 1980, the size of the wine glasses increased. And then again, from 1980 to 2004, the size of the wine glasses doubled. Amazing. In the early 70s, that is almost 300 years back, average wine glass would hold 66 ml of wine. And now the wine glass is 440 ml. Why? They say that originally it was thought that 66 ml is sufficient for one drink. And then the drinking habits changed. People started using more alcohol, more wine. So they increased the size. Rather than have 2 drinks, they still have 1 drink. Now 66 ml and 449 ml. At that time in 1700s, 300 years back, 66 ml was deemed to be sufficient to be 1 drink. Today, it is 449 ml to be 1 drink. The size of the wine glass reflects the trend and fashion in drinking at the time. And that's why the size increases, because of the practical needs. You don't want to keep on refilling it. Then the habits change. At that time, nobody needed or thought it necessary that the wine should be allowed to breathe. It should be aerated. So they will drink it. Now they want the wine to breathe. So you need a larger glass. So what was a priority, not a priority at that time, has become a priority now. And that is why from 66 ml to 449 ml is the size of the glass. And consequently, your drink size increases. There's no denying the fact that having wine is good, but having too much of wine is not good. Let's not forget, alcohol is the 5th largest culprit for premature death and disability, especially in high-income countries. So the size of the wine glass is directly connected with the drinking habits and also the premature mortality of the heavy drinkers. That was just for your information and adding a nugget to your frontier of the knowledge. But the first development, the research into the brain and identification why the brain is ready, when the brain is ready, and how the interconnectivity issues that result in dyslexia or ADHD can be resolved are really an eye-opener and a trend setter. Thank you.